Ryan Cole stood frozen at Emma's doorway, his carefully chosen date-night shirt suddenly feeling like a costume. The words she'd just spoken hung in the air between them like shattered glass. I'm in love with you. 3 years of friendship, 1,000 quiet evenings, countless moments of almost something crackling in the space they pretended didn't exist. And now this. His heart hammered against his ribs as her eyes searched his face for an answer he didn't have. In 2 hours, he had a first date with someone else. But standing here, watching Emma's vulnerability laid bare, Ryan realized he might be about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Before we dive into this story, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if this hits you in the feels, don't forget to hit that like button. Now, let's get into it. The alarm went off at 6:15 a.m., same as it had every weekday for the past 3 years. Ryan Cole's hand shot out from under the covers, silencing the insistent beeping before it could wake his son in the next room. He lay there for exactly 30 seconds, his only moment of stillness before the day's machinery kicked into gear, staring at the ceiling of his modest Denver apartment, watching the early morning light paint shadows across the textured surface. The routine was sacred. It was survival. By 6:17, his feet hit the cold hardwood floor. By 6:20, he was in the shower, letting the hot water work the stiffness from his shoulders while his mind ran through the day's checklist. Project deadline at work. Pick up groceries. Schedule that dentist appointment he'd been putting off for weeks. Remember to sign the permission slip for the field trip. The mental list scrolled endlessly, a familiar comfort in its predictability. By 6:35, he was padding quietly into 7-year-old Mason's room. Hey, buddy, Ryan whispered, gently shaking his son's shoulder. Time to wake up. Mason groaned, burrowing deeper into his dinosaur print comforter. His dark hair, the same unruly brown as Ryan's, stuck up at odd angles, and his small face was still soft with sleep. 5 more minutes, Mason mumbled, words barely intelligible. You said that yesterday and we were late, Ryan reminded him, unable to suppress a smile. Come on, I'll make chocolate chip pancakes if you're up in 2 minutes. One eye opened, suspicious and hopeful in equal measure. Promise? Scout's honor. You weren't a scout, Dad. Ryan laughed quietly. How do you even know that? You said so last week, when I asked if you could help me with knots. Mason sat up, rubbing his eyes with small fists. You said you were more of a figure-it-out-as-you-go kind of kid. The kid's memory was ruthless. Fair enough. But the pancake offer still stands. 2 minutes, or it's back to cereal. That did it. Mason scrambled out of bed, nearly tripping over the action figures scattered across his floor in his rush to the bathroom. Ryan moved to the kitchen, pulling out the pancake mix, chocolate chips, and the griddle that had seen better days. The apartment was small, a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building that had character, which was realtor speak for old but functional. The kitchen barely fit 2 people comfortably, the living room furniture was mostly second-hand, and there was a persistent drip in the bathroom sink that Ryan kept meaning to fix. But it was theirs, safe, manageable. Through the thin walls, he could hear morning sounds from neighboring apartments, someone's television news broadcast. The couple upstairs getting ready for work, their footsteps a familiar rhythm, and from 3B, right next door, the faint sound of music, something acoustic and mellow that he recognized as Emma's morning playlist. Emma Lewis had lived next door for 2 years, though Ryan felt like he'd known her longer. She'd moved in during a thunderstorm, struggling with boxes and a mattress while rain poured down. Ryan had been coming home from picking up Mason from daycare when he'd seen her, soaked and swearing creatively at a box that had split open, sending books tumbling across the wet pavement. Need a hand? He'd asked, Mason hiding half behind his leg, curious but shy. She'd looked up, wet hair plastered to her face, and laughed. Not a polite, embarrassed laugh, but a genuine, exhausted, this is ridiculous kind of laugh. I need several hands, a miracle, and maybe a stiff drink. In that order. They'd gotten her moved in that evening. Mason had helped by supervising, which mostly meant asking questions about every single item that came out of a box. Emma had answered each one patiently, and by the time the last box was inside, Mason was showing her his favorite toy truck and chattering away like they were old friends. That was 2 years ago. Since then, Emma had become what? A friend felt too simple. A safety net? A constant? She was the person Ryan texted when Mason said something unexpectedly profound. The one who knocked on his door when she made too much pasta. The one who'd watch movies with him after Mason went to bed. Their commentary and laughter keeping the apartment from feeling quite so empty. "Dad, pancakes are burning," Ryan snapped back to the present, quickly flipping the pancake that was, indeed, smoking slightly around the edges. "Crisis averted," he called back. Mason appeared in the doorway, dressed in mismatched clothes that Ryan decided weren't worth fighting about. A superhero shirt, plaid shorts, and socks with planets on them. Creative, if nothing else. "Can I have 3 pancakes?" Mason climbed onto one of the 2 bar stools at the narrow counter. "You can have 2.5. We've talked about your eyes being bigger than your stomach." "My eyes are normal size, Dad." "You're weird." Ryan slid a plate across the counter, complete with 2.5 chocolate chip pancakes and a drizzle of syrup. "Eat. We leave in 20 minutes." The morning continued its familiar rhythm. Mason ate while recounting a dream involving dinosaurs and a spaceship, which according to him was totally possible in the future. Ryan packed lunches, peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, the granola bar Mason would definitely forget to eat. He signed the permission slip he'd almost forgotten about, checked that Mason's backpack had everything needed, and mentally ran through his own work bag checklist. By 7:45, they were out the door. The drive to Mason's elementary school was 15 minutes through morning traffic that was predictable in its frustration. Mason talked the entire way, jumping from topic to topic with the effortless energy of childhood. Ryan had learned to track multiple conversation threads simultaneously, offering responses that were at least 70% relevant. And then Tyler said that aliens definitely exist, but they're in a different dimension, which is why we can't see them. And I said that's possible, but also maybe they're just really far away. And, "Dad, are you listening?" "Different dimensions, very far away. You're both scientists in training. What else?" "Mrs. Patterson said we're going to start learning multiplication next week." Mason's voice carried a note of concern. "That sounds hard." Ryan glanced at his son in the rearview mirror. "You know what? I thought that too when I was your age, but it's really just adding the same number over and over. You're good at adding, I guess." Mason didn't sound convinced. "Tell you what, we'll practice together this weekend. Make it fun." "How do you make multiplication fun?" "I don't know yet. We'll figure it out." Ryan pulled into the drop-off lane at school. "That's kind of our thing, right? Figuring it out together?" Mason unbuckled his seatbelt, grabbing his backpack. "Yeah, okay." He leaned forward for a quick hug, his small arms squeezing Ryan's neck. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, buddy. Have a good day. Learn something cool." "I always do." Mason scrambled out of the car, nearly forgetting his lunch before Ryan called him back. With his paper bag lunch clutched in one hand, Mason joined the stream of kids heading into the building, his dinosaur backpack bouncing with each step. Ryan waited until Mason disappeared through the doors before pulling away. A familiar ache settled in his chest, the same one he got every morning at drop-off. Pride mixed with a touch of melancholy, the constant awareness that Mason was growing up, that these routines wouldn't last forever, that he was doing this parenting thing solo, and some days that weight felt heavier than others. The drive to work was quieter. Ryan worked as a project manager for a mid-sized construction firm, a job that paid the bills and offered decent insurance but didn't set his soul on fire. It was fine. Stable. He'd learned to appreciate stability over passion after Mason was born. His phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Emma. "Coffee machine died. Send help or caffeine, preferably both." Ryan smiled, typing back one-handed. "There's a coffee place literally next door to our building. But then I have to put on real pants. You know, ones without elastic waistbands. Tragedy. You mock my pain. I'll bring you coffee on my lunch break. You're my hero, the hero this city needs. That's Batman. You're mixing your references. Pre-coffee." Emma doesn't care about accurate references. The light turned green. Ryan set his phone down, but the smile lingered. These small exchanges punctuated his days, little moments of lightness in the careful structure he'd built. Work consumed the next several hours. Budget reviews, client calls, a site visit that ran long because of unexpected foundation issues, emails that multiplied faster than he could answer them. Ryan moved through it all with practiced efficiency, the kind that came from years of learning to compartmentalize, to focus, to get things done despite the constant mental background noise of single parenthood. Lunch break came at 12:30. Ryan grabbed 2 coffees from the shop near the office, one black for himself, one with an absurd amount of caramel and cream for Emma, and made the drive back to the apartment building. He knocked on 3B using his elbow, hands full with coffee cups. Emma opened the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, glasses perched on her nose. She worked from home as a graphic designer, which meant her dress code was, as she'd once put it, whatever doesn't have visible stains. "Oh my God, you actually came." She grabbed the caramel concoction reverently. "I'm putting you in my will." "I'm honored. What do I get?" "My collection of houseplants that I keep accidentally killing. It's quite impressive." Ryan leaned against the doorframe. "How do you accidentally kill a cactus, Emma? They literally thrive on neglect." "I overwatered it, out of love." She took a long sip of coffee, closing her eyes in appreciation. "This is perfect. You're perfect. Not in a weird way. In a coffee delivery way." "I understood the distinction." "How's your day?" She gestured for him to come in, but Ryan shook his head. "Only have a few minutes. Site visit ran long, and I've got a 1:30 call." He paused, then added, "Actually, wanted to ask you something." "Shoot." Ryan felt suddenly awkward, which was stupid. This was Emma. Easy, comfortable Emma. "I have plans tonight. Was wondering if you could be on standby in case I need to call, just in case something comes up with Mason. My usual backup sitter is out of town." Emma's expression shifted, something Ryan couldn't quite read flickering across her features. "You have plans? Like, plans?" "I have a date," Ryan admitted, feeling heat creep up his neck. "First one in a while." "Oh." Emma's smile seemed to take effort. "Yeah, of course, absolutely. I'm around. Just text me if you need anything." "Thanks, I really appreciate it." Ryan checked his watch. "I should go. Enjoy the caffeine." "Ryan?" Emma called as he turned to leave. "Yeah?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, shook her head slightly. "Nothing. Have fun tonight. You deserve it." He gave her a wave and headed back down the stairs, missing the way her smile faded the moment he was out of sight. The afternoon crawled by. Ryan's 1:30 call turned into a 2-hour ordeal involving budget disputes and timeline concerns. By the time he got back to his desk, there was a new fire to put out, a permit issue that threatened to delay their largest project. He handled it, along with a dozen other small crises, his mind only occasionally drifting to the evening ahead. A date. With Jennifer, a woman he'd met at Mason's school during a parent-teacher night 3 weeks ago. She'd been funny, easy to talk to, and when she'd suggested coffee, Ryan had said yes before he could overthink it. Coffee had gone well enough that dinner seemed like a logical next step. So why did he feel like he was preparing for a job interview rather than an evening out? By the time Ryan left work at 5, his stomach was doing uncomfortable things. He picked up Mason from after-school care, listening to another enthusiastic recap, this time about a science experiment involving vinegar and baking soda that had apparently exploded everywhere. "Sounds messy," Ryan commented, pulling into their apartment complex. "It was awesome." Mason unbuckled himself. "Can we do science at home?" "We'll see. Maybe this weekend." Upstairs, Ryan made Mason dinner, chicken nuggets and carrot sticks, the vegetables included to ease his parental guilt, while mentally cycling through his closet. What did people wear on dates? He'd been out of this game for so long he wasn't sure there was still a game, or if the rules had changed entirely. "Dad, you're being weird," Mason observed from the table. "How am I being weird? You keep staring at nothing, and you burned my nuggets." Ryan looked at the slightly too crispy nuggets on Mason's plate. "They're extra crunchy." "They're burnt." "When did you become a food critic?" Mason grinned, ketchup on his chin. "Since always. I'm very good at it." After dinner, Mason settled in front of the TV with a movie he'd seen 100 times. Ryan retreated to his bedroom, staring at his closet with the intensity usually reserved for major life decisions. Blue shirt? Too casual. Black shirt? Too formal. The green one? Emma had once said it brought out his eyes, but that felt like overthinking. Wait, why was he thinking about what Emma said? Ryan grabbed a white button-down, simple and safe, and paired it with dark jeans. Casual but put together. He showered quickly, tried to do something with his hair that didn't look like he was trying too hard, and checked his reflection with the critical eye of someone who rarely had reason to care about his appearance beyond, basically, presentable. It was 7:15. His reservation was at 8. Mason was engrossed in his movie, safe and happy. Ryan should feel excited, or at least optimistic. Instead, he felt off balance, uncertain. Without fully deciding to, he found himself knocking on Emma's door. She answered after a moment, barefoot in jeans and a soft t-shirt, her hair down around her shoulders. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. "Hey," Ryan said. "Sorry to bother you. Do I look okay? I haven't done this in a while, and I don't know if this is too much or not enough, or—" "You look great," Emma said, but her voice sounded strange, tight. "You sure? The shirt's not too— Ryan, you look great." She stepped back, pulling the door wider. "Come in for a second." He followed her inside. Emma's apartment was the same layout as his, but felt entirely different. Where his was sparse and functional, hers was filled with color, artwork on the walls, plants in various states of health crowding the windowsills, throw pillows on her couch that actually matched. Books stacked everywhere in organized chaos. She moved to her small kitchen counter, leaning against it, arms crossed. "So, first date in a while, huh?" 3 years, actually. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, immediately regretting it because he'd probably just messed up whatever he'd managed to accomplish with it. "Since before Mason's mom left. I don't even know if I remember how to do this." "It's just dinner, conversation. You're good at conversation." "With you, yeah. With strangers? With someone who might be judging whether I'm worth a second date? I feel like I'm 17 again, except worse because I have a kid now and a mortgage and approximately zero idea what's cool or interesting." Emma's laugh was short, almost sharp. "You're plenty interesting, Ryan. Trust me." "Thanks, I think." He glanced at his watch. "I should go. Mason's watching a movie, but if you could just keep my phone on." "I know. I've got it." Emma pushed off the counter, moving closer. "Here, your collar's a little—" She reached up, adjusting his collar with careful fingers. They were standing close, closer than usual, and Ryan could smell her shampoo, something citrusy and clean. Her hands lingered for just a second longer than necessary, and when she stepped back, something in her expression had shifted. The air in the room felt different, heavier. "Emma?" Ryan's voice came out quieter than intended. She looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes holding something he couldn't quite name. Her hands twisted together in front of her, and he realized she was nervous. Emma was never nervous. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. Ryan's heart started beating faster. "Okay. I've been trying to find the right time, the right way to say this, but I don't think there is a right way. And if I don't say it now, I don't know when I will, and you're about to go on a date with someone else. And I just—" She took a breath. "I'm in love with you." The words landed like a physical blow. Ryan felt the air leave his lungs, felt the room tilt slightly. "I've been in love with you for a while now," Emma continued, words coming faster now, like a dam breaking. "Maybe since the beginning, I don't know. I didn't mean for it to happen. You were my neighbor, my friend, and I told myself that was enough, but it's not. It's really not. And I watch you with Mason, and I see how hard you work, how much you care, and I see you building this careful, safe life where you never let anyone in, and I want to be let in, Ryan. Not as the neighbor who watches movies with you, not as the backup babysitter. As someone who matters. As someone you could maybe feel the same way about." Ryan stood frozen, his mind racing, unable to land on a single coherent thought. Emma was in love with him. Emma. His friend, his constant, the person who'd been there for 2 years, who knew Mason's favorite bedtime stories, and how Ryan took his coffee and what made him laugh when he was tired. Emma, who was looking at him now with such vulnerable hope that it physically hurt to see. Ryan started but couldn't find words to follow. You don't have to say anything right now, Emma said quickly. I know this is a lot. I know you have a date. I just needed you to know, before you went, before... She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. Ryan's phone buzzed. A reminder. Reservation in 30 minutes. He looked at Emma, at the door, at his phone. His chest felt tight, his thoughts a chaotic mess. 3 years of careful routine, of keeping things simple and manageable, of not complicating his life because Mason needed stability, because he needed stability. All of it was crumbling in the space between heartbeats. I have to go, Ryan heard himself say, hating the words even as they left his mouth. I'm sorry. I have to... Jennifer's expecting me, and I can't just... I know. Emma's smile was broken at the edges. Go. It's fine. It wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. Ryan moved toward the door like a man underwater, everything slow and surreal. He paused at the threshold, turned back. Emma was still standing in her kitchen, arms wrapped tight around herself, and he wanted to say something, anything that would make this better. But he didn't know what that would be. So he left, pulling the door closed behind him with a quiet click that sounded deafening in the hallway's silence. Back in his apartment, Mason looked up from his movie. You okay, Dad? You look weird again. I'm fine, buddy. Ryan's voice sounded normal, at least. That was something. Movie almost done? Almost. It's the best part. Ryan nodded, not really hearing. He grabbed his wallet and keys, operating on autopilot. Remember, Emma's right next door if you need anything, but you should be asleep before I'm back. I know the rules, Dad. I'm not a baby. Right, of course. Ryan crouched down, pulling Mason into a hug that lasted longer than usual. Mason squirmed a little, but allowed it, small arms wrapping around Ryan's neck. Have fun on your date, Mason said when Ryan finally released him. Thanks, buddy. Be good. I'm always good. The drive to the restaurant passed in a blur. Ryan's hands gripped the steering wheel, his mind replaying Emma's words on an endless loop. I'm in love with you. How had he not seen it? Or had he seen it and deliberately ignored it because acknowledging it would mean making a choice, taking a risk, potentially disrupting the careful balance he'd created? He pulled into the restaurant parking lot 10 minutes early, sitting in his car with the engine running, staring at nothing. Jennifer was inside, probably already seated, waiting for him. Jennifer, who was nice and uncomplicated and represented the kind of normal, straightforward progression that Ryan's life was supposed to have. A date. Maybe another one. Maybe eventually something more. Simple. Safe. And Emma was at home, probably crying, having just laid her heart bare only to watch him walk away. Ryan's phone buzzed, a text from Mason. Emma came over with cookies. She said you told her to check on me, but I know you didn't. She seems sad. Did you guys fight? Followed immediately by, the cookies are really good, though. Ryan closed his eyes, resting his forehead against the steering wheel. What the hell was he doing? His phone rang. Jennifer, he answered. Hey, I'm here, she said cheerfully. Got us a great table by the window. Where are you? Parking lot. I'll be right in. Ryan forced himself to sound normal. Sorry, traffic was worse than I thought. No worries. See you in a sec. Ryan ended the call, took a breath, and got out of the car. The restaurant was nice. Candlelight, soft music, the kind of place that was romantic without being over the top. Jennifer was at a corner table, waving when she saw him. She looked great, her dark hair styled, wearing a dress that was elegant and flattering. You made it! She stood for a brief hug, her perfume floral and strong. I was starting to think you'd gotten lost. No, just slow traffic. Ryan sat down, accepting a menu from the hovering waiter. You look really nice. Thanks. You too. I like the shirt. They ordered drinks. Jennifer launched into a story about her day, something involving a difficult client and a project deadline. Ryan nodded in the right places, offered appropriate responses, but his mind was elsewhere. 30 blocks away, in apartment 3B, Emma was probably... Ryan? He snapped back to attention. Sorry, what? Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. I asked how your day was. Right. It was fine, busy, the usual chaos. How's Mason? Good, he's good. Learning multiplication next week, which he's convinced will be impossible. He's a smart kid. He'll figure it out. Jennifer sipped her wine. Must be nice, though, having Emma next door. Built-in backup must make things easier. Ryan's chest tightened. Yeah, she's been great. You guys are pretty close, huh? Mason talks about her sometimes when I'm at school events. She's a good friend. Just a friend? Jennifer's tone was light, but there was a question underneath it. Yeah, just a friend. The words tasted like a lie. Dinner arrived. Ryan ate mechanically, participating in conversation with about 30% of his actual attention. Jennifer was trying, she was funny, engaging, clearly interested, and Ryan felt guilty for being such poor company. I'm sorry, he said finally, setting down his fork. I'm being terrible company tonight. Jennifer studied him. You seem distracted. I am, and it's not fair to you. Ryan rubbed his face. I thought I was ready for this, dating again, moving forward, but I don't think I am. To her credit, Jennifer didn't look surprised. The friend next door? Ryan hesitated, then nodded. It's complicated. It usually is. Jennifer's smile was kind. Look, I think you're great, Ryan, but I'm not interested in being someone's second choice while they figure out their feelings about someone else. Life's too short. You're right. I'm sorry. Don't be. Better to know now than 3 dates from now. She signaled the waiter. We can split the check and part as friends? I'd like that. They finished their meal with lighter conversation, the pressure off now that they'd both acknowledged this wasn't going anywhere. Jennifer told him about her sister's upcoming wedding. He shared a funny story about Mason's recent obsession with penguins. By the time they left, Ryan genuinely hoped they could be friends. In the parking lot, they hugged goodbye. For what it's worth, Jennifer said, I hope it works out with your neighbor. Mason clearly adores her, and if she makes you this distracted, she must be pretty special. She is, Ryan admitted. He drove home slowly, his mind clearer than it had been in hours. The apartment was dark when he arrived, except for the nightlight in Mason's room. Ryan checked on his son, fast asleep, cookies crumbs still on his nightstand, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching him breathe. Being Mason's dad was the best thing Ryan had ever done. But somewhere along the way, he'd let it become his only thing. He'd built walls around his heart, told himself it was for Mason's protection, for stability. But maybe some of it had been fear. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of letting someone in only to have them leave, the way Mason's mom had. Emma wouldn't leave. The thought came with absolute certainty. Emma, who'd been there for 2 years through every small crisis and quiet moment. Emma, who'd looked at him tonight with her heart in her eyes and taken the biggest risk of all. Ryan walked to his kitchen, staring at the wall that separated his apartment from Emma's. It was late, nearly 11. She was probably asleep, or lying awake, replaying their conversation, wondering if she'd just destroyed their friendship. He pulled out his phone, started to text her, then stopped. This wasn't a conversation for text messages. Tomorrow. He'd talk to her tomorrow. Ryan went to bed but didn't sleep, staring at his ceiling the same way he had that morning. Except everything had changed. The careful routine he'd built, the safe life he'd cultivated. It all suddenly felt insufficient, empty in ways he hadn't let himself acknowledge. At 3 a.m., he heard Emma's door open and close. Footsteps in the hallway, the sound of her going downstairs, probably unable to sleep too. Ryan got up, pulled on shoes, and followed. He found her in the building's small courtyard, sitting on a bench in the pool of yellow light from a street lamp. She didn't look up when he approached, though he knew she'd heard him. Couldn't sleep either? Ryan asked quietly. Nope. Emma's voice was rough. Turns out confessing your love to your best friend and getting nothing in return is not great for sleep. Ryan sat down beside her, leaving space between them. I didn't give you nothing. You left. I know. I'm sorry. How was your date? The question was bitter. Short. We both agreed it wasn't going anywhere. Emma finally looked at him. Her eyes were red. Because of me? Yeah, because of you. Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've spent 3 years building this perfect routine, Emma. Everything controlled, predictable, safe. For Mason, I told myself. But really, a lot of it was for me. Because safe doesn't hurt, safe doesn't leave. Ryan, let me finish. He turned to face her. You scared me tonight. Not because I don't feel the same way, but because I do. And that's terrifying. You matter, Emma. Matter. You've mattered for a long time. And I've been actively not thinking about what that means because thinking about it would mean admitting I've been half living for years. Emma's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't know how to do this. I have a 7-year-old son who comes first, always. I have baggage and trust issues and a life that's complicated at best. I'm saying I'm probably going to be terrible at this because I'm out of practice and scared of screwing it up. Ryan, but I'm also saying that sitting in that restaurant tonight, all I could think about was you. The way you laugh at my terrible jokes, how you remember that Mason likes his sandwiches cut diagonally, that you knocked on my door last Tuesday with soup because I mentioned I had a headache. You've been part of my life, part of our life, and I've been too afraid to see what was right in front of me. Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. So what does that mean? Ryan reached out, hesitating for just a moment before taking her hand, her fingers laced with his immediately, holding tight. It means I don't have all the answers. It means I need time to figure out how to do this right, for Mason's sake. But it also means I don't want to keep pretending you're just my neighbor, just my friend. He squeezed her hand. I'm in love with you too, Emma. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. Emma made a sound between a laugh and a sob, and then she was moving, closing the distance between them, her hands framing his face. Can I kiss you? She whispered. I've wanted to for so long. Yeah, Ryan breathed. Please. Her lips met his softly, tentatively, as if testing that this was real. Ryan's hand came up to cup the back of her head, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened, 2 years of almosts and what-ifs finally becoming something concrete and true. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Emma laughed shakily. That was worth the wait. We should probably talk about logistics, Ryan said, his practical brain trying to reassert itself. About Mason, about how we… Tomorrow, Emma interrupted. We can figure out tomorrow. Right now, can we just sit here? Together? Ryan pulled her against his side, Emma's head settling on his shoulder as naturally as breathing. Yeah, we can do that. They sat in the quiet courtyard, the city sleeping around them, holding on to each other as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Ryan's mind was still racing with questions and concerns and the 1,000 details that would need addressing. But for the first time in 3 years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. And as Emma's fingers intertwined with his, her breathing evening out as she started to drift off against his shoulder, Ryan let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, taking a risk on something real was worth the fear. The routine would change. Life would get complicated. But some complications, he was starting to realize, were exactly what he'd been missing. The sun was fully up by the time they made it back inside. Emma had fallen asleep against his shoulder in the courtyard, and Ryan had let her rest there for nearly an hour, his arm going numb but unwilling to move and disturb her. When she'd finally stirred, blinking awake with confusion that melted into a soft smile when she remembered where she was, they'd walked upstairs together in comfortable silence. At her door, Emma had hesitated. So this is real? Last night actually happened? It's real, Ryan had confirmed, kissing her forehead, because he could now, because that was allowed. Get some sleep. We'll figure everything else out later. Later, she'd agreed, but her hand had lingered in his for a long moment before she'd finally let go and slipped inside. Ryan had gone back to his own apartment, checked on Mason one more time, and collapsed into bed for 3 hours of sleep that felt simultaneously too short and the best rest he'd had in years. Now, Saturday morning sunlight was streaming through his bedroom window, and he could hear Mason already awake, the telltale sounds of cartoons drifting from the living room. Ryan dragged himself out of bed, his body protesting the late night and emotional upheaval, but his mind surprisingly clear. Everything had changed, and somehow that felt right. Morning, buddy, Ryan said, padding into the living room. Mason was sprawled on the couch in his dinosaur pajamas, cereal bowl balanced precariously on his lap. You're up late, Mason observed without looking away from the screen. You were out really late last night, too. Emma said you had a date. Ryan's stomach dropped slightly. She did? When she brought cookies, I asked where you were. Mason finally looked at him, curious. Was it fun? It was interesting. Ryan moved to the kitchen, starting the coffee maker with desperate efficiency. How were the cookies? Really good. But Emma seemed sad. Did you guys fight? Kids noticed everything. It was easy to forget that when they were busy being goofy and 7, but Mason had always been perceptive, reading emotions in a way that sometimes caught Ryan off guard. We didn't fight, Ryan said carefully. We just had a complicated conversation. About what? Adult stuff. Mason rolled his eyes. You always say that. Because it's usually true. The coffee maker gurgled to life, and Ryan silently blessed modern technology. What do you want to do today? We've got the whole weekend. Can we go to the Science Museum? Tyler said they have a new dinosaur exhibit. Sure. Let me check what time they open. Ryan pulled out his phone, deliberately not looking at the 3 unread messages from his sister that were probably checking in on how the date went. He'd deal with those later. Much later. The museum opened at 10. It was just past 8 now, which gave them plenty of time. Ryan made himself presentable while Mason got dressed, the kids somehow managing to find the one shirt with a mystery stain that Ryan couldn't identify. He decided to pick his battles and let it go. They were heading out the door at 9:30 when it opened. Emma's door, not his. She stepped into the hallway at the exact same moment, wearing jeans and a light sweater, her hair pulled back, looking tired but beautiful. Her eyes met Ryan's, and for a second they just stared at each other, the hallway crackling with everything unsaid. Hi, Emma said softly. Hi. Mason looked between them, confused. Are you guys being weird again? Probably, Emma admitted, her gaze still locked on Ryan's. Where are you two headed? Science Museum, Mason announced. There's a new dinosaur thing. Do you want to come? The question hung in the air. Ryan saw Emma's uncertainty, the way she glanced at him as if asking permission. This was the complicated part, the part they hadn't figured out yet. How did they transition from neighbors to whatever this was, without confusing Mason or moving too fast? But Mason was looking at Emma with hopeful eyes, and she was one of his favorite people, and really, what harm could it do? You should come, Ryan heard himself say. If you want to, no pressure. Emma's smile was worth the risk. I'd love to. The drive to the museum had Mason chattering in the back seat about all the dinosaur facts he knew, which was considerable. Emma sat in the passenger seat, her hand resting on the center console, so close to Ryan's that he could feel the warmth of her skin. Every time they stopped at a red light, their eyes would meet, small smiles passing between them that felt like secrets. The museum was crowded with weekend families, kids racing between exhibits while exhausted parents chased after them with varying degrees of success. Mason was in heaven, dragging them from display to display, reading every placard with serious concentration before launching into his own theories about how dinosaurs might have actually looked or behaved. The feathers thing is really cool, he explained to Emma as they stood in front of a velociraptor display. Because it means they were probably really colorful, like birds, not gray and green like in the movies. That is cool, Emma agreed. So they might have been, what, bright blue? Red? Could have been anything. That's what's awesome about it. We don't know for sure. Mason's eyes were bright with excitement. We just have to use science and imagination. Ryan watched them together, something warm and complicated settling in his chest. This was what scared him most. Not his own feelings, but Mason's. His son already loved Emma. If this didn't work out, if they tried and failed, it wouldn't just be Ryan's heart on the line. As if sensing his thoughts, Emma glanced back at him, raising an eyebrow in silent question. You okay? He nodded. I'm okay. They spent 2 hours wandering through exhibits. Mason eventually wore himself out enough to request a snack, so they found themselves in the museum cafeteria, sitting at a small table with overpriced sandwiches and juice boxes. This was fun, Mason declared through a mouthful of peanut butter. We should do this more. Do what more? Ryan asked. Hang out. The 3 of us. Mason looked between them. We do stuff together sometimes, but usually it's at home. This was different. Different good or different bad? Emma asked gently. Mason considered this with the seriousness he applied to most questions. Different good. It felt like he struggled for the word. I don't know, like we're a team? Ryan's throat tightened. Emma reached under the table, her hand finding his knee, squeezing once. The touch was hidden from Mason, but grounding for Ryan. I like being on a team with you guys, Emma said, her voice steady even though Ryan could see the emotion in her eyes. Me too, Mason said happily, returning his attention to his sandwich. The drive home was quieter, Mason tired from the morning's excitement, his head lolling against the window as he dozed. Emma's hand found Ryan's on the center console this time, their fingers intertwining. Neither of them spoke, but they didn't need to. Some conversations happened in silence. Back at the apartment, Mason went straight to his room to work on a Lego set, leaving Ryan and Emma standing in the hallway between their two doors. Come in? Ryan asked quietly. We should probably talk. Emma nodded, following him inside. The apartment felt different with her in it now, charged with new meaning. She settled on the couch, tucking her legs under her, and Ryan sat beside her, leaving barely any space between them. This morning, Emma started, with Mason. Was that okay? I didn't want to overstep, but when he asked, it was perfect, Ryan interrupted. He loves you. That's not news. You've been part of his life for 2 years. But now it's different. Yeah, now it's different. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. I need to be careful about this, Emma. Not because I don't want it, but because Mason has to come first. If he gets attached and then we don't work out, I know. Emma's hand found his. I would never hurt him, Ryan. Or you. I'm in this for real. Not just for the fun parts, but for the complicated parts too. It's going to be really complicated sometimes. Single-parent dating is... He trailed off, not sure how to articulate the specific challenges. Is what? Ryan thought about it. It's like, I can't just think about what I want. Every decision affects Mason. When I date someone, I'm not just asking, do I like this person? I'm asking, could this person be good for my son? Would they be patient with the reality of my life? Can I trust them with the most important thing in my world? And that's terrifying because I've already watched one person walk away from him, and I can't... His voice broke slightly. I can't let that happen again. Emma shifted closer, her hand coming up to cup his face. Look at me. He did. I'm not her, Emma said firmly. I'm not Mason's mom. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide this is too hard and leave. I've been here for 2 years, Ryan. I've seen the tough days. I've seen you exhausted and stressed and worried. I've seen Mason have meltdowns and refuse to sleep and go through that phase where he only wanted to eat macaroni and cheese. I've been here through the reality, not just the highlight reel. And I'm still here. I'm still in. I know you are. Logically, I know that. Ryan closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. But fear isn't always logical. No, it's not. Emma's thumb brushed across his cheekbone. So we take it slow. We figure it out as we go, and we communicate. If you're scared, you tell me. If I'm feeling insecure, I tell you. We don't let things build up. That sounds healthy and reasonable. I have my moments. She smiled. What do you need right now to feel okay about this? Ryan considered the question. What did he need? Honestly, I think I just need to let myself believe this is real, that you're not going to disappear. I'm very real and extremely not disappearing. Emma leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. I'm right next door. I'm not going anywhere. They sat like that for a long moment, breathing together, the proximity soothing in a way Ryan hadn't experienced in years. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be close to someone like this, to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. Can I ask you something? Emma said softly. Anything. When did you know that you felt the same way? Ryan pulled back enough to look at her properly. Honestly, I think I've known for a while but wouldn't let myself acknowledge it. But last night, sitting in that restaurant, all I could think about was you. How you make everything better just by being around. How easy it is to talk to you. How you're the first person I want to tell when something funny happens. And I realized that's not just friendship. That's More. Emma's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I was so scared last night, after you left. I thought I'd ruined everything. You didn't ruin anything. You were brave. Ryan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm sorry I didn't say it back right away. I'm sorry I left. You had a date. I kind of ambushed you. Best ambush of my life, Ryan said, and was rewarded with Emma's laugh, the sound filling his chest with warmth. A door opened down the hall, Mason's room. They heard his footsteps heading toward the bathroom. Without discussing it, Emma and Ryan shifted slightly apart, not wanting to present anything that might prompt questions they weren't ready to answer yet. Mason emerged a minute later, noticed Emma on the couch, and plopped down between them without ceremony. Are you staying for dinner? Emma glanced at Ryan, asking silently. If she wants to, Ryan said. But I should warn you, it's my turn to cook, which means the menu is limited. Dad makes really good spaghetti, Mason told Emma, but that's kind of the only thing. I make other things, Ryan protested. You make spaghetti with different shapes of pasta. That's not different things, Dad. Emma laughed. Spaghetti sounds great. So Emma stayed for dinner. They fell into an easy rhythm in the small kitchen, Emma chopping vegetables while Ryan boiled water, Mason setting the table with exaggerated care. It felt natural, like something they'd done 100 times before. In some ways, they had. How many nights had Emma been over for dinner? How many times had they shared meals and conversation? But now everything was colored with new awareness. Ryan was hyper-conscious of every time Emma brushed past him in the narrow kitchen. Every smile she gave him felt weighted with meaning. When Mason wasn't looking, she'd catch Ryan's eye, and the connection between them was almost tangible. Over dinner, Mason talked about the museum, recounting his favorite parts with the kind of detailed memory kids had for things that excited them. He'd moved on from the feathered dinosaurs to the interactive earthquake simulator, which he insisted they needed to install in their apartment. For science, he explained seriously. I don't think the landlord would approve, Ryan said. Have you asked? I have not asked to install an earthquake simulator in our apartment. No. Then you don't know for sure he'd say no. Emma was trying not to laugh. That's actually pretty solid logic. Don't encourage him, Ryan said, but he was smiling. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Mason wanted to watch a movie and they let him pick, which resulted in an animated film about dragons that Ryan had seen approximately 50 times. Mason settled between them on the couch, and somewhere during the opening credits, Emma's hand found Ryan's behind the kid's back, their fingers linking together. Halfway through the movie, Mason fell asleep, his head on Ryan's shoulder, mouth slightly open in the boneless way kids slept. Ryan looked over at Emma, who was watching them both with such tender affection that it made his chest ache. Help me get him to bed, Ryan whispered. They moved carefully, Ryan lifting Mason while Emma led the way, turning on the nightlight and pulling back the covers. Mason barely stirred as Ryan laid him down, mumbling something incoherent before rolling over and burrowing into his pillow. Good night, buddy, Ryan whispered, pressing a kiss to Mason's forehead. Emma hung back in the doorway and Ryan joined her, pulling the door mostly closed. They stood in the hallway, suddenly alone and aware of it. I should probably go, Emma said, but she didn't move. Probably, Ryan agreed, also not moving. They stood there, looking at each other, the air between them electric. Ryan's hand came up, cupping Emma's face, his thumb brushing her lower lip. She inhaled sharply, her eyes darkening. Can I kiss you? Ryan asked, echoing her question from the night before. You better. He closed the distance slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she rose to meet him, her hands fisting in his shirt as their lips met. This kiss was different from the one in the courtyard, deeper, more certain, carrying the weight of years of wanting. Emma made a small sound in the back of her throat, and Ryan backed her gently against the wall, his hands framing her face as the kiss intensified. They broke apart, breathing hard, Emma's hands still clutching his shirt, her forehead resting against his. Wow, she breathed. Yeah. Ryan's heart was racing. We should probably slow down. Probably. But neither of them moved, caught in the gravity of each other. Finally, with visible effort, Emma stepped back. I really should go before we get too carried away and Mason wakes up, and this gets really awkward. Ryan laughed, running a hand through his hair. Good call. But Emma? Yeah? Tomorrow, maybe we could talk more. Figure out what this looks like going forward. I'd like that. She reached up, pressing a quick kiss to his lips. Sweet dreams, Ryan. Night, Emma. He watched her let herself into her apartment, waiting until he heard the lock click before going back inside. The apartment felt too quiet suddenly, too empty. Ryan found himself standing at the window, looking out at the city lights, his mind racing. This was really happening. He and Emma. After 2 years of friendship, of carefully maintained boundaries, they were crossing into new territory. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. I can't stop smiling. Just thought you should know. Ryan smiled at his phone like a teenager. Me neither. Get some sleep. We have a lot to figure out tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Me too. Good night, Ryan. Good night. Ryan got ready for bed in a daze, his mind replaying the evening on loop. Emma in his kitchen. Emma on his couch. Emma backing against the wall as he kissed her like he'd wanted to for longer than he'd admitted to himself. He was in bed, nearly asleep, when another thought struck him. They'd have to tell people eventually. His sister would have opinions. Lots of them. His coworkers would make jokes. Mason's school friends might notice Emma coming around more. The idea of making this public, of claiming what they had in front of the world, should have felt scary. Instead, it felt right. Like something he wanted to shout from the rooftops rather than hide. Ryan fell asleep with that thought, with Emma's smile behind his eyes and the promise of tomorrow waiting. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear. Ryan woke early out of habit, but instead of his usual routine, he found himself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling with a grin he couldn't suppress. Everything felt different. The same apartment, the same Sunday morning sounds from neighbors, the same alarm clock on his nightstand, but everything had shifted. He checked his phone. A text from Emma, sent 20 minutes ago. Coffee on my balcony? Mason's invited too, obviously. Ryan smiled, typing back. Give us 30 minutes, bringing bagels. He got Mason up, fielding questions about why they were having breakfast on Emma's balcony, with the practiced deflection of a parent who knew how to redirect without lying. Is this going to be a regular thing? Mason asked, pulling on his favorite superhero shirt. Maybe. Would that be okay? Mason shrugged, the movement casual but his eyes curious. Yeah, Emma's cool. They showed up at Emma's door with bagels from the bakery down the street and juice for Mason. Emma answered in pajama pants and a tank top, her hair messy, glasses on instead of contacts, looking sleepy and beautiful. Morning, she said, stepping aside to let them in. Her apartment smelled like coffee, and she had her small balcony table set with plates and mugs. It wasn't much, barely enough room for 3 people, but it felt intimate and special in a way their usual casual hangouts never had. Mason claimed the best chair and immediately started eating, apparently starving despite having had cereal an hour ago. Kids were bottomless pits. Emma and Ryan sat close together, their knees touching under the small table. Every time their eyes met, small smiles passed between them, private and warm. So, Emma said after Mason had gone inside to use the bathroom, leaving them briefly alone. I've been thinking. Dangerous, Ryan teased. She rolled her eyes. About us. About how we navigate this. And I think we should tell Mason, soon. Ryan's stomach clenched. Yeah? He's perceptive, Ryan. He's going to notice us acting different, and I'd rather be honest with him than have him figure it out and feel like we were hiding something. Emma reached across the table, taking his hand. I'm not saying we make some big announcement, but maybe we just let him see that we care about each other, answer honestly if he asks questions. I'm scared of confusing him. I know, but kids are resilient, and Mason's smart. I think he'll be okay with it, especially if we're straightforward and let him process at his own pace. The bathroom door opened inside. Mason was coming back. Okay, Ryan said quickly. We'll tell him, together, when the moment feels right. Emma squeezed his hand once before releasing it as Mason returned, launching into a story about a dream he'd had involving robots and pizza. The moment came later that afternoon. They'd spent the day together, a walk to the park, lunch at Mason's favorite burger place, some time at the playground where Mason made friends with 2 kids, and proceeded to organize an elaborate game involving dinosaurs and aliens that Ryan couldn't quite follow. Back at the apartment, Mason was building with Legos while Ryan and Emma sat on the couch, leaving a careful foot of space between them. But Mason kept glancing over, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he set down his Legos and turned to face them fully. "Are you guys dating?" he asked bluntly. Ryan froze. Emma's hand found his, squeezing tight. "What makes you ask that?" Ryan said, his voice surprisingly steady. "You keep looking at each other weird, and you hold hands sometimes when you think I'm not watching. And yesterday at the museum felt different." Mason's face was serious, not upset but curious. "So are you?" Emma looked at Ryan, asking silently for permission. He nodded. "We are," Emma said gently. "We're dating. Is that okay with you?" Mason considered this, his small face thoughtful. "Does that mean Emma's your girlfriend?" "Yeah," Ryan said. "It does." "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know yet." Mason was quiet for a moment. "Will she be here more or less?" "Probably about the same amount," Emma said. "We're not changing everything, Mason. We're just being honest about how we feel about each other. I still love hanging out with you. That doesn't change." "And you still love hanging out with Dad?" "Very much." Mason looked at Ryan. "Do you love hanging out with Emma?" "Yes, a lot." Another pause, then, "Are you going to get married?" Ryan nearly choked. "Whoa, that's way down the line, buddy. We just started dating. We're taking things slow." "But maybe someday?" Mason pressed. "Maybe someday," Emma said carefully. "But that's future stuff. Right now, we're just figuring things out." Mason nodded slowly, processing. Then his face brightened. "So when you guys go on dates, does that mean I get more time with Mrs. Patterson from school? She's a good babysitter. She brings her dog sometimes." Ryan and Emma exchanged glances, both fighting smiles. "Potentially," Ryan said. "Cool." Mason returned to his Legos like this was settled. "Can Emma still help with my homework?" "Of course," Emma said. "And watch movies with us?" "Absolutely." "And make those really good cookies?" "Anytime you want." "Okay then." Mason picked up 2 Lego pieces, snapping them together. "I'm okay with it. Emma's nice. And she makes you smile more, Dad." Ryan felt his throat tighten. "She does?" "Yeah, you've been smiling a lot since yesterday. It's weird, but good." Mason looked up at them. "Just don't get all gross and kissy when I'm around, okay?" "We'll do our best," Emma promised, her voice thick with emotion. And just like that, it was settled. Mason went back to his building project, humming tunelessly, apparently satisfied with the new arrangement. Ryan looked at Emma, seeing his own wonder reflected in her eyes. "That went better than expected," he whispered. "He's an amazing kid." "He really is." They sat there, hands linked between them now that the secret was out, watching Mason play. The afternoon light filtered through the windows, painting everything golden, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like peace, like rightness, like coming home. This was his life now. His son, his home, and Emma. Not perfect, probably not easy, but real and honest and full of possibility. Emma's head came to rest on his shoulder, and Ryan pressed a kiss to her hair, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "Hey, Ryan," Emma said softly. "Yeah?" "Thank you for taking a chance on this, on us." Ryan tightened his arm around her. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell me how you felt, for being patient with me while I figured it out. We're going to be okay, right?" There was vulnerability in her voice, the same fear he'd been carrying. "Yeah," Ryan said with more certainty than he'd felt about anything in years. "We're going to be okay." And sitting there in his living room, with his son playing nearby and Emma warm against his side, Ryan believed it. The first few weeks of their new relationship unfolded with a gentleness that surprised Ryan. He'd expected complications, awkward moments, growing pains as they figured out how to transition from friends to something more. And there were some of those, moments where old habits clashed with new boundaries, where they had to stop and recalibrate. But mostly, it felt natural. Easy in a way that scared him with its simplicity. Emma started spending more time in their apartment, but not in a way that felt intrusive. She'd come over after work while Ryan was making dinner, helping Mason with homework at the kitchen table while Ryan chopped vegetables. She joined their movie nights, though now she sat tucked against Ryan's side instead of in the armchair. Small changes that felt monumental in their significance. Mason adapted with the resilience of childhood. He tested boundaries occasionally, watching them carefully when they held hands or shared a quick kiss, but he never seemed bothered. If anything, he seemed pleased, like having Emma around more officially was something he'd wanted all along. "She's basically been part of our family anyway," Mason had said one night, matter of fact as only a 7-year-old could be. Now it's just official. Ryan's sister Claire had been less immediately accepting when he'd finally called to tell her. "Wait, Emma? Your neighbor, Emma?" Claire's voice had been sharp with surprise. "The one you've been insisting was just a friend for 2 years?" "That's the one." "Ryan Michael Cole, are you telling me you've been in denial for 2 entire years?" "I wasn't in denial. I was being cautious." Claire had laughed, the sound both exasperated and fond. "You were being an idiot. I met Emma at Christmas, remember? She looked at you like you hung the moon, and you looked at her the same way, and I told you then that you should ask her out." "You did not say that." "I heavily implied it, which is basically the same thing." A pause. "But seriously, Ryan, are you happy?" He'd thought about it, really thought about it. "Yeah, I am." "Good. You deserve to be happy. And Mason?" "He's doing great with it. Better than I expected, honestly. Kids usually are. We're the ones who complicate things." Claire had softened. "Bring her to dinner next month. I want to properly meet the woman who finally got through your walls." That had been 3 weeks ago. Now they were approaching a month of officially being together, and Ryan was starting to believe that maybe this could actually work. That maybe he could have this. A partner, someone to share his life with, without sacrificing the stability Mason needed. It was a Wednesday evening when everything shifted. Ryan had worked late, stuck in a meeting that ran long because of client complaints about a delayed project. By the time he made it to the after-school program, he was running 20 minutes behind schedule, his phone buzzing with increasingly urgent texts from the program director. He rushed in, apologies ready, to find Mason sitting alone in the corner of the room, his backpack clutched to his chest, eyes red-rimmed. "Hey, buddy." Ryan crouched down in front of his son. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible and my meeting ran over." "You forgot," Mason said, his voice small. Ryan's stomach dropped. "Forgot what?" "The science fair presentation. Today, after school. You said you'd be there." Mason's lower lip trembled. "Everyone else's parents came. Tyler's dad was there. Sarah's mom brought cookies. And you forgot." The words hit like physical blows. Ryan had forgotten. Completely, utterly forgotten. It had been on the calendar, Mason had reminded him at breakfast, and it had still slipped his mind in the chaos of the workday. "Mason, I'm so sorry." Ryan reached for his son, but Mason pulled back. "You promised you'd be there." "I know, I messed up. There's no excuse." Ryan felt his chest tighten with guilt. "Did you do your presentation?" "Yeah, Mrs. Patterson helped me set up, but it's not the same." Mason stood, shouldering his backpack. "Can we just go home?" The drive back was silent, except for Mason's occasional sniffles. Ryan tried several times to start a conversation, to apologize again, but Mason just stared out the window, small and hurt in the back seat. When they got home, Mason went straight to his room, closing the door with a firm click that might as well have been a slam. Ryan stood in the hallway, running his hands through his hair, feeling like the world's worst father. He'd had one job, be there for his kid, and he'd failed at it. All the careful balance he'd maintained for 3 years, all the routines and systems designed to make sure Mason never felt forgotten or neglected, and he'd blown it over a work meeting that probably hadn't even been that important. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "How did the science fair go? Mason must have killed it." Ryan stared at the message, something ugly twisting in his gut. Emma remembered. Emma, who wasn't Mason's parent, who had no official obligation to track his schedule, had remembered when Ryan had forgotten. He typed back, "I forgot, completely forgot. Mason's devastated, and I'm the worst father alive." The response came quickly. "Oh no, are you guys okay? Do you need anything?" "I don't know. Mason won't talk to me. Want me to come over? Sometimes a third party helps." Ryan almost said yes, but then something stopped him. This was his mess, his failure as a parent. He needed to fix it, not outsource the emotional labor to Emma. "Thanks, but I think I need to handle this one on my own." "Rain check?" "Of course. Let me know if you change your mind." "And Ryan, you're not the worst father. You're human. Humans forget things sometimes." He wanted to believe her. But standing outside Mason's closed door, listening to his son's quiet crying through the thin wood, Ryan felt like the worst kind of failure. He knocked softly. "Mason, can I come in?" "I guess." Ryan opened the door to find Mason sitting on his bed, his science fair project, a poster board about the water cycle, propped against the wall. It was good work, detailed and colorful, clearly something Mason had put effort into. "Your project looks amazing," Ryan said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You didn't see me present it." "I know, and I'm so sorry about that. There's no excuse for forgetting something that important to you." Mason picked at a loose thread on his comforter. "You've been different lately." Ryan's chest tightened. "Different how?" "Distracted. You're always texting Emma or talking to Emma or thinking about Emma." Mason's voice was accusatory in the way only a hurt child's could be. "You forgot because you were thinking about her instead of me." The words landed like a punch. "That's not true, buddy. I forgot because I had a crazy day at work and I messed up. It has nothing to do with Emma." "You never forgot stuff before she was your girlfriend." "That's not fair, Mason. I've forgotten things before. Remember when I missed your dentist appointment last year? Or when I forgot it was pajama day at school and you were the only kid in regular clothes?" "That's different." "How is it different?" Mason's face crumpled. "Because now you have someone else to think about. It used to be just us, and now there's Emma, and what if you forget about me because you're too busy with her?" Oh. There it was. The real fear underneath the anger about the science fair. Ryan moved closer, pulling Mason into his arms despite his initial resistance. "Listen to me. Look at me, Mason." Reluctantly, Mason raised his tear-stained face. "You are the most important person in my entire world," Ryan said firmly. "That hasn't changed. That will never change. Yes, I care about Emma. A lot. But you come first, always. You are my priority, my kid, my whole heart. Do you understand that?" "But you forgot." "I forgot because I'm not perfect. I made a mistake, and I'm going to make mistakes again because I'm human. But those mistakes don't mean I love you any less or that you're not important to me." Ryan wiped a tear from Mason's cheek. "I'm going to do better. I'll set more reminders on my phone. I'll check with you every morning about what's happening that day. I'll make sure this doesn't happen again." "Promise?" "I promise I'll try my hardest. Can you forgive me for today?" Mason was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but Dad." "Yeah? I'm still mad." "That's fair. You're allowed to be mad." Ryan hugged him tighter. "How about this? This weekend, we do something special, just you and me, whatever you want. Science museum again? That arcade you've been asking about? You name it." "Just us? Not Emma?" The question stung, but Ryan kept his voice steady. "Just us. Father-son time." Mason relaxed slightly. "Okay, the arcade. Deal." They sat there for a while, Mason eventually letting himself be held, the anger slowly draining out of his small body. By the time Ryan left the room, his son was calmer, though the hurt was still visible in his eyes. Ryan closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. His phone buzzed again. "Emma. Everything okay?" He stared at the message, a dozen responses running through his mind. But what he typed was, "Can we talk tomorrow after Mason's at school?" "Of course." "My place or yours?" "Yours." "Okay, I'll have coffee ready." Ryan went to bed that night with Mason's words echoing in his mind. "You never forgot stuff before she was your girlfriend." It wasn't true. Ryan had forgotten things before Emma, had made mistakes as a parent long before their relationship began, but the accusation had burrowed under his skin, planted a seed of doubt that grew in the quiet darkness. What if Mason was right in some way? Not that Emma was a distraction, but that Ryan had been so focused on figuring out this new relationship that he'd let other things slip. The careful balance he'd maintained for 3 years, work, parenting, life, had felt manageable when it was just him and Mason. Adding another person, even someone as wonderful as Emma, shifted that balance, made it more complicated, and maybe he wasn't managing it as well as he'd thought. The next morning's routine was subdued. Mason was polite but distant, answering Ryan's questions with one-word responses. The drive to school was quiet. When they pulled up to the drop-off lane, Mason grabbed his backpack but paused before getting out. "Dad? Yeah, buddy? I love you, even when I'm mad." Ryan's throat tightened. "I love you too, so much. Have a good day at school." "You too at work." Ryan watched him walk into the building, waving when Mason turned back at the door. Then he drove to Emma's apartment, his mind heavy with everything he needed to say. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair in a messy bun, concern written across her face. "Hey, come in." Her apartment smelled like coffee and something baking. Banana bread, he realized, spotting the loaf cooling on her counter. She'd made his favorite. "You didn't have to do that," Ryan said, gesturing to the bread. "I wanted to. Thought you might need comfort food." Emma poured 2 mugs of coffee, handing one to him. "Want to sit?" They settled on her couch, the same one where they'd watched movies as friends, where they'd had their first kiss as something more. Emma tucked her legs under her, giving him space but staying close enough to touch if he needed it. "Talk to me," she said gently. "What happened yesterday?" Ryan told her everything, the forgotten science fair, Mason's tears, the accusation that had cut deeper than any anger could. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression growing more troubled as he spoke. "And the thing is," Ryan said, staring into his coffee, "maybe he's not entirely wrong. Not that you're a distraction, but that I've been trying to juggle too much and something had to give. And yesterday, what gave was showing up for my kid." "Ryan, you made a mistake. One mistake. You're being too hard on yourself." "Am I?" "Because I feel like I'm failing at everything right now. I'm failing as a parent. I'm probably failing as a boyfriend. I can't seem to get the balance right." Emma set down her mug, turning to face him fully. "What are you saying?" "I don't know." Ryan rubbed his face with both hands. "I just keep thinking about what Mason said, that it used to be just the two of us, and now there's you. And what if he's right? What if I'm not equipped to be a single parent and be in a relationship at the same time? So what, you're going to choose? It's either me or being a good father?" Emma's voice was carefully controlled, but he could hear the hurt underneath. "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying, Ryan? Because it sounds like you're looking for a reason to run." "I'm not running. I'm trying to be realistic about my capacity here." Ryan stood, needing to move, to pace. "Mason has to come first. I told you that from the beginning. And if being with you means I'm going to start dropping the ball with him, one forgotten event doesn't mean you're dropping the ball." Emma stood too, her hands clenched at her sides. "You're using this as an excuse to panic, to push me away before I can get too close. That's not fair. Isn't it? You've been terrified from the start that this wouldn't work, and now the second something goes wrong, you're ready to bail, to convince yourself that you can't have both a relationship and be a good father." "Because maybe I can't," Ryan's voice rose despite himself. "Maybe my life doesn't have room for this. Maybe I was an idiot to think I could..." "Could what? Be happy? Let someone in?" Emma's eyes were bright with angry tears. "You're so convinced you have to do everything alone that accepting help or sharing your life somehow makes you weak or makes you a bad parent. But that's not true, Ryan. You can have both. You're just too scared to try. You don't get it. You don't have kids. You don't understand what it's like to have someone depending on you completely, to know that every decision you make affects them. The weight of that." The words were out before Ryan could stop them, and he watched them land like a slap. Emma's face went pale, then flushed with hurt and anger. "You're right," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I don't have kids. I don't know what that's like. But I do know what it's like to care about someone enough to be patient with their fears, to support them even when they're being impossible, to love a child that isn't mine because he's part of the person I love." "Emma." "No, you don't get to do this. She wrapped her arms around herself. You don't get to use Mason as a weapon every time you get scared. Yes, he comes first. I've never questioned that. But using him as an excuse to keep me at arm's length? That's not about being a good parent. That's about you being afraid. Maybe I am afraid, Ryan shot back. Maybe I'm terrified that I'm going to screw this up, that I'm going to hurt Mason by trying to balance too much, that I'm going to lose you anyway, so why put everyone through this? So you're going to make that decision for all of us without even trying to work through it? Ryan didn't have an answer for that. Emma laughed, bitter and broken. You know what the worst part is? I thought we were past this. I thought you trusted me, trusted us, but at the first sign of trouble, you're ready to blow it all up and convince yourself it's for the best. I'm trying to protect my son. You're trying to protect yourself. Emma's voice cracked. And you know what? Fine. If you're so determined to believe this can't work, then maybe you're right. Maybe we should just stop now before anyone gets more hurt than they already are. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and final. Ryan wanted to take them back, wanted to cross the space between them and tell her she was wrong, that he wasn't giving up, that they could figure this out. But the fear was too big, too overwhelming, choking any words before they could form. Emma waited, and when he didn't speak, something in her expression shuddered. I think you should go, she said quietly. Emma, please, just go. Ryan left, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like an ending. He stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at the closed door, waiting for her to open it, to call him back. But she didn't. In his apartment, everything looked the same, but it felt hollow. Empty in a way it hadn't even when he'd been alone before Emma, because now he knew what he was missing. Ryan went through the motions of his day, went to work, answered emails, attended meetings, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the fight on an endless loop. Emma's words echoed in his head. You're using Mason as an excuse. You're too scared to try. Maybe you're right. Maybe we should just stop. He'd done exactly what she'd accused him of. At the first real obstacle, he'd panicked and looked for the exit, because that was safer than staying and risking more hurt, more failure, more loss. But what had he actually accomplished? Mason was still hurt about the science fair, and now Ryan had hurt Emma too. And himself. At lunch, he sat in his car and called Claire. Twice in 1 month, his sister answered. This must be serious. I think I just blew up my relationship. With Emma, what did you do? Ryan told her about the science fair, about Mason's accusations, about the fight with Emma. Claire listened, her silence more damning than any lecture could be. Are you done? She asked when he finished. Yeah. Good, because I'm about to be honest with you, and you're not going to like it. Claire's voice was firm. You're being an idiot. Claire, I'm not finished. You forgot Mason's science fair. That sucks. You're human, and humans forget things sometimes. You apologized, you're making it up to him, and you're putting systems in place to do better. That's good parenting. What's not good parenting is using that mistake as an excuse to sabotage your relationship with a woman who clearly loves you and Mason. It's not that simple. It really is. You're scared. You've been scared since Sarah left, and that's understandable. But you can't let that fear run your life forever, Ryan. At some point, you have to take a risk on being happy. What if it doesn't work? What if Emma and I crash and burn and Mason gets hurt in the process? What if it does work? What if you build something beautiful and Mason gets to see what a healthy relationship looks like? What if you get to be happy and still be a great dad? Claire paused. You're not choosing between Emma and Mason. That's a false choice you've created in your head. You can have both. You just have to believe you deserve both. Ryan leaned his head back against the seat. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't listen. Her voice softened. Ryan, you're a great dad. One forgotten event doesn't change that. And being in a relationship doesn't make you a worse parent. If anything, showing Mason that you can open your heart, that you can love someone and let them love you back, that's teaching him something valuable. I said some really hurtful things to Emma. Then you apologize. You grovel if you have to. You fight for what matters. Claire was quiet for a moment. Does she matter? Ryan thought about Emma in his kitchen, laughing at Mason's jokes. Emma helping with homework, her patience endless. Emma in the courtyard at dawn telling him she loved him. Emma this morning, hurt written across her face as he basically confirmed every fear she'd ever had about not being enough. "Yeah," he said quietly, "she matters." "Then stop being an idiot and tell her that." Ryan ended the call and sat in his car for a long time, watching people come and go from the office building, living their lives, dealing with their own complications. Everyone was fighting their own battles, carrying their own fears. But some things were worth fighting for. By the time Ryan picked up Mason from school, he'd made a decision. His son climbed into the car, still subdued but less distant than he'd been that morning. "How was school?" Ryan asked. "Fine. We started multiplication today." "How'd it go?" "Better than I thought. It's kind of just adding." Mason paused. "Mrs. Patterson said my science fair project was one of the best in the class." "It was a great project, buddy. I'm sorry again that I missed seeing you present it." "I know." Mason was quiet for a moment. "Is Emma mad at me?" Ryan glanced in the rearview mirror, surprised. "Why would Emma be mad at you?" "Because I said that stuff yesterday. About you forgetting because of her. I didn't mean—" Mason trailed off. "I was just upset." "Emma's not mad at you. She could never be mad at you." Ryan's chest ached. "But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be really honest with me. Are you okay with me dating Emma? Really okay? Because if you're not, we need to talk about it." Mason thought about it, his face serious in that way kids got when they were processing big emotions. "I like Emma. A lot. She's nice and funny, and she helps me with stuff. And she makes you happy. But sometimes I worry that you'll forget about me. That if you have Emma, you won't need me anymore." Ryan pulled the car into their parking lot but didn't get out, turning to face Mason fully. "Come here." Mason unbuckled and climbed into the front seat, letting Ryan pull him into a hug. "Listen to me very carefully," Ryan said into his son's hair. "There is nothing and no one in this entire world that could make me not need you. You're my kid. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Having Emma in my life doesn't change that. It doesn't take away from what we have. If anything, it adds to it." "Really?" "Really. Think about it. Before Emma, was there ever a time when you wished I had someone to help us? Someone to make things a little easier?" Mason nodded against his chest. "Emma doesn't replace you or make you less important. She's just someone else who cares about both of us. Someone who makes our team bigger." Ryan pulled back to look at his son. "But you and me? We're always going to be the core team. Nothing changes that. Even if you marry her someday?" The question caught Ryan off guard. "Even then. Though that's a long way off, if it ever happens at all." "Do you think it will? Happen?" Ryan thought about Emma's apartment that morning, about the hurt in her eyes, about how badly he'd screwed up. "I don't know, buddy. I might have messed things up pretty badly with her today." "What did you do?" "I got scared. And when I got scared, I said some things I shouldn't have. I made her feel like she wasn't important when she's very important." Mason frowned. "That was dumb, Dad." "Yeah, it really was. You should apologize. That's what you always tell me to do when I mess up." "You're absolutely right." Ryan ruffled Mason's hair. "How'd you get so smart?" "I have a really good teacher." Mason grinned. "You?" Ryan's eyes stung. "Come on, let's go inside. And this weekend we're still doing that arcade trip, just you and me. Deal?" "Deal." They went upstairs together, and Ryan tried not to look at Emma's door as they passed, but he could feel her absence like a physical thing, the space between their apartments suddenly feeling miles wide instead of inches. That night, after Mason went to bed, Ryan sat on his couch staring at his phone. He'd typed and deleted a dozen messages to Emma, none of them feeling adequate. How did you apologize for pushing away someone who'd only ever tried to be there for you? How did you explain fear in a way that didn't sound like an excuse? Finally, he gave up on the text and just walked next door, knocking softly. Emma opened it after a long moment, her eyes red-rimmed, wearing the same clothes from that morning. She looked exhausted. "Can I come in?" Ryan asked. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Her apartment was dim, only one lamp burning. The banana bread still sat on the counter, untouched. Emma moved to the couch but didn't sit, arms wrapped around herself in a gesture that was pure self-protection. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, the words feeling inadequate but necessary. "I'm so sorry, Emma, for what I said, for how I acted, for making you feel like you weren't important or that I was looking for a way out." "Were you?" Her voice was small. "Looking for a way out?" "No, I was panicking. Mason said something that hit all my worst fears, and instead of talking to you about it, I let those fears take over. I convinced myself that I had to choose between being a good father and being with you. But that was never the real choice." "Then what is the real choice?" Ryan moved closer, stopping just short of touching her. "The choice is between letting fear run my life or choosing to trust. Trust that I can do both. Trust that you're not going anywhere. Trust that making mistakes doesn't mean I'm failing at everything." Emma's eyes searched his face. "I meant what I said this morning. I'm not trying to replace Mason or compete for your attention. I would never ask you to choose between us." "I know, and I'm sorry I made it seem like you were." Ryan finally let himself touch her, his hand gentle on her arm. "You were right about everything. I was using Mason as an excuse. I was too scared to really try. And the second things got hard, I looked for the exit because that felt safer than staying and working through it." "Why?" Emma's voice broke. "Why is being with me so scary?" "Because losing you would destroy me." The truth came out raw and honest. "I've already lost one person I loved. I've already watched someone walk away from me and Mason, and the thought of going through that again, of letting you all the way in and then having you leave, it terrifies me." Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. "I'm not her, Ryan. I'm not Sarah. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide this is too hard. I know, logically, I know that, but fear isn't always logical." Ryan cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away tears. "I'm asking you to be patient with me while I work through this, to call me out when I'm being an idiot, to remind me that choosing love isn't choosing less for Mason. It's choosing more for both of us." "Are you choosing love?" Emma whispered. "Or are you going to run again the next time things get hard?" "I'm choosing love. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing to believe that we can figure this out together." Ryan rested his forehead against hers. "I'm all in, Emma. Scared as hell, but all in. If you'll still have me." Emma's hands came up to grip his shirt, holding tight. "You hurt me today." "I know. I'm so sorry. If we do this, if we really try, you have to talk to me when you're scared. You can't just shut down and push me away. I will. I promise. No more running. And we figure out the balance together, both of us. It's not all on you to manage everything." "Together," Ryan agreed. Emma searched his eyes for a long moment, and Ryan held his breath, waiting. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, we try. Together." Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight he could feel her heartbeat against his chest. Emma buried her face in his neck, her arms wrapping around him with equal desperation. "I love you," Ryan whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry it took me so long to say it, and I'm sorry I'm such a mess, but I love you." Emma pulled back just enough to look at him, her smile watery but real. "I love you too, even when you're being an idiot." "Especially when I'm being an idiot?" "Especially then." Ryan kissed her, pouring every apology and promise and hope into it. Emma kissed him back, her hands in his hair, and for the first time in days, Ryan felt like he could breathe properly. When they finally broke apart, Emma led him to the couch, curling against his side. They sat in the quiet for a long time, just holding each other, letting the fight and hurt settle into something they could work with. "Mason asked me today if I was going to marry you someday," Ryan said eventually. Emma's breath caught. "What did you say?" "I said it was way too early to think about that, but also that I didn't know because I might have messed everything up. And now?" Ryan turned to look at her. "Now I'd say that someday doesn't sound impossible. Scary and complicated and way too far in the future to think about seriously, but not impossible." Emma smiled, pressing a kiss to his jaw. "I can live with not impossible." They stayed like that until late, talking through everything. How to better balance their time, how to how to make sure Mason never felt neglected, how to communicate when fear started creeping in. It wasn't a perfect solution, and they both knew there would be more hard days ahead. But it was honest, real, and sometimes that was enough. When Ryan finally left Emma's apartment that night, it was past midnight. He stood in the hallway between their doors for a moment, feeling the weight of the day settle into something manageable. The fight had been brutal, the kind that exposed every raw nerve and fear they'd both been carrying, but they'd come through it. Bruised, maybe, but together. The next morning started earlier than usual. Mason was already awake when Ryan's alarm went off, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and his multiplication homework spread out in front of him. "You're up early," Ryan observed, starting the coffee maker. "Couldn't sleep." Mason didn't look up from his worksheet. "Is Emma still mad?" Ryan sat down across from him. "We talked it out last night. We're okay." "Good." Mason penciled in an answer, then erased it. "These problems are harder than Mrs. Patterson said they'd be." "Want help?" They spent the next 20 minutes working through multiplication together, Ryan showing Mason tricks for remembering the patterns, Mason gradually relaxing as the numbers started making sense. It was exactly the kind of moment Ryan had been afraid he'd lose. These quiet mornings, just the two of them, no one else needing his attention. But Emma wasn't asking him to give this up. She'd never asked him to give anything up. That realization settled something in Ryan's chest that had been unsettled for weeks. "Dad?" Mason looked up from his homework. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "When you and Emma had your fight yesterday, was it because of me? Because of what I said about you forgetting?" Ryan's heart clenched. "No, buddy, it wasn't your fault. Adults are complicated sometimes. We say things we don't mean when we're scared or hurt. But that's our responsibility to work through, not yours." "But if I hadn't said that stuff about Emma, then I would have found something else to panic about eventually." Ryan reached across the table, stilling Mason's hand. "You were honest about how you felt. That's good. That's what I want you to always do. The rest was on me for not handling it well." Mason nodded slowly, seeming to accept this. "So we're all okay? You and me and Emma? We're all okay. And this weekend, you and I are still going to that arcade, father-son time, remember? Can Emma come to dinner after? Not to the arcade, but maybe we could all have dinner together?" The question caught Ryan off guard. "You want Emma at dinner?" "Yeah, I missed her yesterday. It felt weird not seeing her." Mason went back to his homework, casual as anything. "Plus she makes really good mac and cheese. Better than yours." Ryan laughed despite himself. "My mac and cheese is perfectly fine. It's okay. Hers is better." "Noted. I'll ask her about dinner." They finished the morning routine and Ryan dropped Mason at school with the usual ritual. Hug, reminder to learn something cool, wave at the door. But today, Mason hesitated before getting out of the car. "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry I said you never forgot stuff before Emma. That wasn't true. You forget stuff sometimes anyway." "Thanks for that reminder," Ryan said dryly. "But you're a really good dad, even when you mess up." Mason grinned. "Just wanted you to know." He was out of the car before Ryan could respond, backpack bouncing as he ran to join his friends. Ryan sat there for a moment, his throat tight, wondering how he'd gotten lucky enough to have this kid. At work, Ryan found it easier to focus than he had the day before. The panic that had been clawing at his chest for weeks had loosened its grip. He still had concerns about balancing everything, but they felt manageable now. Concrete problems he could solve rather than overwhelming fears he couldn't name. During lunch, he texted Emma. "Mason wants to know if you'll come to dinner Saturday night, after my arcade obligation." Her response came quickly. "I'd love to. Should I bring my superior mac and cheese? He told you yours was better than mine?" "He didn't have to. I could tell by the way he scraped his bowl." "Traitor. Both of you. We're just honest about your culinary limitations." "Remind me why I'm dating you again?" "My sparkling personality and exceptional mac and cheese skills." Ryan smiled at his phone, something warm spreading through his chest. This easy back and forth, the teasing and warmth. This was what he'd almost thrown away because he'd been too scared to believe he could have it. The rest of the week passed in a rhythm that felt both familiar and new. Emma came over for dinner twice, helping Mason with homework while Ryan cooked. They watched a movie on Thursday night, The three of them squeezed onto the couch, Mason eventually falling asleep between them. Ryan and Emma had carried him to bed together, working in silent coordination, and the domesticity of it had felt overwhelming in the best way. Friday afternoon, Ryan got a call from his boss about the project that had caused him to miss the science fair. There were more delays, more problems, more meetings needed. Ryan felt the old panic start to rise, the endless juggling act of work and parenting, and now a relationship, all the balls in the air threatening to come crashing down. But then he remembered what Emma had said. You can't do everything alone. It's not all on you to manage. So instead of saying yes to the weekend meeting his boss suggested, Ryan took a breath and said, I have plans with my son this weekend. Can we schedule it for Monday morning instead? There was a pause. Then his boss said, Sure, Monday works. Have a good weekend, Ryan. It was that simple. Ryan had been so used to sacrificing his time, saying yes to every demand because he was afraid of being seen as less committed, less reliable. But one boundary, clearly stated, and the world hadn't ended. He texted Emma, Just set a work boundary, turn down a weekend meeting. Proud of you. How does it feel? Terrifying and great in equal measure. That's growth, baby. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Ryan and Mason had breakfast together, then headed out for their father-son arcade adventure. Mason was vibrating with excitement in the passenger seat, talking a mile a minute about which games he wanted to try first. The arcade was loud and bright and chaotic, exactly the kind of sensory overload that would normally have Ryan counting the minutes until they could leave. But watching Mason's face light up with every game, seeing his pure joy when he won tickets, made every second worth it. Dad, look! Mason ran over with a handful of tickets. I got the high score on the racing game. That's amazing, buddy. You're going to have enough tickets to get something good from the prize counter. They spent 3 hours there, playing games and eating overpriced pizza and collecting tickets. By the time they left, Mason had earned enough for a stuffed dinosaur that was nearly as big as he was, and Ryan had a headache from the noise but a heart full of contentment. That was the best day ever, Mason declared in the car, hugging his dinosaur. Better than the science museum? Different kind of best, like that was learning best and this was fun best. Mason thought about it. You can have more than one kind of best, right? Absolutely. Life's not a competition where only one thing gets to be the best. That's good, because I have a lot of bests. Mason counted on his fingers. Best food is pizza. Best animal is a T-Rex. Best person is you. Best friend at school is Tyler. Best grown-up friend is Emma. Ryan glanced in the rearview mirror. Emma's one of your bests? Yeah, is that okay? More than okay, buddy. I'm glad you have her in your life. Me too. Mason was quiet for a moment. Dad, are you going to ask her to move in with us someday? Ryan nearly swerved. Where did that come from? Tyler's mom has a boyfriend and he's moving in with them next month. Tyler says it's weird but also cool because the boyfriend has a really good TV. Mason shrugged. I was just wondering if Emma might move in. She's already here a lot anyway. That's something that would be way, way in the future if it ever happened. Ryan's heart was racing. We've only been dating for a month, buddy. But you love her, right? Yeah, I do. And she loves you? She does. Then why wait, if you already know? Kids had a way of cutting through all the complexity straight to the simple truth. Ryan didn't have a good answer, so he went with honesty. Because sometimes grown-ups need time to be sure, and because big changes like that affect everyone in the family. So we'd all need to talk about it together first. Okay, but for the record, I'd be okay with it. Emma's nice and she makes good cookies, and she doesn't get mad when I leave Legos everywhere. I'll keep that endorsement in mind, Ryan said, filing this conversation away to process later. Much later. They got home around 5, and Emma arrived at 6 with her promised mac and cheese and a salad that Ryan suspected was her attempt to add something healthy to balance out the cheese and arcade pizza. She'd changed from her usual casual clothes into a sundress, and Ryan found himself staring for a moment before Mason barreled into her with a hug. Emma, look at my dinosaur. I got the high score and won so many tickets. He's magnificent, Emma said solemnly, examining the stuffed T-Rex. Does he have a name? Mason considered this. Not yet, I'm thinking about it. They settled into dinner with easy conversation. Mason recounted every detail of the arcade trip while Emma and Ryan exchanged amused glances over his head. The mac and cheese was, Ryan had to admit, significantly better than his boxed version. Okay, you win, he told Emma. Your mac and cheese is superior. I know, but it's nice to hear you say it, she grinned. Family recipe. My grandmother made it for every special occasion. This is a special occasion? Mason asked. Every dinner with you guys is special, Emma said simply, and Ryan watched his son beam. After dinner, they played board games until Mason started yawning. Ryan got him ready for bed while Emma cleaned up the kitchen, and when Ryan came back out, she'd also made coffee and was curled up on the couch waiting for him. Hey, she said softly when he sat down beside her. Hey yourself. Ryan pulled her against his side, pressing a kiss to her temple. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for inviting me. I had a really good time. Mason had an interesting question on the drive home. Ryan hesitated, then figured he might as well just say it. He asked if you were going to move in with us someday. Emma went very still. Oh, what did you say? That it was way too early to think about that. That we've only been dating a month. Ryan played with her hair, needing something to do with his hands. But he also said he'd be okay with it. For the record. For the record, Emma repeated. And what about you? Would you be okay with it? Hypothetically, way in the future. Ryan thought about it. A month ago, the question would have sent him into a panic spiral. But now, sitting here with Emma warm against his side, his son asleep down the hall, dinner dishes done, and coffee brewing, it didn't feel scary. It felt like possibility. Hypothetically, way in the future, when we've been together long enough that it makes sense? Yeah, I think I'd be more than okay with it. He tilted her face up to look at him. But we're not there yet. We're still figuring out how to do this. I know, and I'm not trying to rush anything. Emma's hand found his. But it's nice to know we're thinking about the same future, even if it's far off. It's nice, Ryan agreed, kissing her softly. Very nice. They stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. Emma told him about a new design project she'd landed, her excitement infectious. Ryan shared stories about Mason from before Emma had moved in, filling in the gaps of their history. At some point, Emma fell asleep against his shoulder, and Ryan sat there for a long time just holding her, marveling at how natural this felt. Eventually he woke her gently, walking her to her door with his hand in hers. Same time tomorrow? Emma asked, sleepy and soft. Can't tomorrow. Mason and I are going to my sister's for lunch, but tomorrow night, we could do a movie after he goes to bed. It's a date. Emma kissed him, slow and sweet. Tell Claire I said hi. She's going to grill me about us, you know. I know. Tell her I'm wonderful and you're very lucky. Both those things are true, Ryan said, stealing one more kiss before finally letting her go. Sunday lunch at Claire's was exactly the interrogation Ryan had expected. His sister took one look at him and said, Okay, spill. You look different. Different how? Ryan helped Mason set up his dinosaur collection in Claire's living room while she finished cooking. Happy, relaxed, like you're not carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders for once. Claire stirred something on the stove. So I'm guessing you and Emma worked things out. We did. It was rough for a minute there, but we talked through it. And? And we're good. Better than good, actually. Ryan leaned against the counter. She's amazing with Mason. She's patient with me, even when I'm being difficult. And I think... He paused, testing the words. I think this might actually work, long term. Claire set down her spoon, turning to look at him properly. Ryan Cole, are you telling me you're thinking about a future with someone? Don't make it a thing. I'm absolutely making it a thing. This is huge. She pulled him into a hug. I'm so happy for you. You deserve this. I don't know about deserve. You do. You absolutely do. You've been putting everyone else first for years. It's okay to let someone take care of you too. Lunch was chaotic in the best way. Claire's husband Mike regaled Mason with stories about his own arcade adventures as a kid, the two of them bonding over vintage video games. Claire cornered Ryan in the kitchen while they were getting dessert. Bring her next time, she said. Emma, I want to get to know her properly. As your girlfriend, not just the neighbor I met at Christmas. She'd like that. She was nervous about meeting you, actually. Why? I'm delightful. You're terrifying when you want to be. Claire laughed. Fair. But tell her she has nothing to worry about. Anyone who can get through your walls and make you smile like this has my full approval. On the drive home, Mason was quiet in the back seat, worn out from playing with Claire's kids. Ryan glanced back to find him half asleep, hugging his dinosaur. You have a good day, buddy? Mm-hmm. Aunt Claire makes really good dessert. She does. Better than mine? Everything's better than yours, Dad. You're not a good cook. When did you get so honest? You always tell me honesty is important. Mason yawned. So I'm importanting. Ryan smiled. Fair enough. That night, after Mason was asleep, Emma came over for their movie date, but they didn't make it very far into the film before talking instead, curled up together on the couch in the soft lamplight. Mason told me today that everything is better than my cooking, Ryan said. Apparently I've been put on notice. Emma laughed. To be fair, you did burn those pancakes last week. They were extra crispy. There's a difference. Keep telling yourself that. She traced patterns on his arm, idle and comfortable. How was Claire? Good. She wants to have you over for dinner, officially, as my girlfriend. That sounds terrifying. She's harmless. Mostly. Ryan pressed a kiss to Emma's hair. But you don't have to if you're not ready. No pressure. I want to. I want to know the people who matter to you. Emma looked up at him. I'm all in on this, Ryan. The whole messy, complicated thing. Your family, your life, all of it. Even my terrible cooking? Especially your terrible cooking. Someone has to make sure you and Mason don't survive on cereal and takeout. They fell into comfortable silence, the movie playing unwatched in the background. Ryan found himself thinking about Mason's question again. About Emma moving in. About the future that had seemed impossible a month ago, and now felt inevitable. Not now, not even soon, but someday. What are you thinking about? Emma asked, clearly sensing the shift in his mood. The future. How a month ago I was convinced I couldn't do this, and now I can't imagine not doing this. Ryan tightened his arm around her. You've changed everything, Emma. You've changed things too, made me believe that love doesn't have to be complicated, that sometimes it can just be easy and right. I don't know if I'd call any of this easy, Ryan said with a laugh. Okay, not easy, but worth it. Worth the hard conversations and the growing pains and the figuring it out as we go. Definitely worth it. Emma shifted to look at him properly. Can I tell you something that might be too much too soon? Ryan's heart rate picked up, but he nodded. Always. When I imagine my future now, you and Mason are in it. Not as a maybe or a hope, but as a certainty. Like I can't picture my life without you both in it. She rushed on before he could respond. I know we've only been together officially for a month. I know we're taking things slow, but I wanted you to know that this isn't casual for me. It never has been. Ryan cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. It's not too much. And it's not too soon. Because I feel the same way. When I think about the future, you're there in all the important moments, all the everyday ones. You're there. Emma's eyes were bright with emotion. Yeah? Yeah. Ryan kissed her softly. You're not getting rid of me, Emma Lewis. Or my terrible cooking. You're stuck with both of us. Best thing I've ever been stuck with. They kissed again, deeper this time. Weeks of tension and fear and uncertainty finally settling into something solid and real. When they broke apart, Emma was smiling, and Ryan felt lighter than he had in years. Stay, he said impulsively. Not forever, not moving in or anything. Just tonight. Sleep on the couch with me. I don't want you to leave yet. Emma's smile widened. Okay, let me just grab my phone charger. She ran next door and came back in minutes, and they settled on the couch together, Emma's head on Ryan's chest, his arms around her. They didn't talk much after that, just existing together in the quiet, and eventually they both drifted off. Ryan woke sometime around 3 a.m. to find Emma still asleep against him, their legs tangled together, her hand fisted in his shirt. The TV had gone to standby mode, and the apartment was dark except for the streetlight filtering through the windows. He should wake her, send her to her own bed, or carry her to his. They were adults in a relationship, after all. But there was something about this moment, Emma trusting him enough to fall asleep vulnerable in his arms, the peace on her face, the weight of her against him. That felt too precious to disturb. So Ryan pulled the throw blanket over them both, pressed a kiss to Emma's forehead, and let himself drift back to sleep holding the woman he loved. When he woke again, it was to sunlight streaming through the windows and Mason standing beside the couch, staring at them with wide eyes. "Dad," Mason whispered, "Emma slept here." Ryan blinked awake fully, carefully extracting himself from Emma without waking her. He ushered Mason into the kitchen, keeping his voice low. "She fell asleep during the movie. I didn't want to wake her up in the middle of the night to walk next door." "So she slept on the couch? With you?" "Yeah, is that okay?" Mason considered this, his small face serious. Then he shrugged. "I guess. It's not weird. You're dating. Dating people sleep near each other sometimes." "That's very mature of you." "I'm 7. I know stuff." Mason peered around the corner at the couch. "Should we make her breakfast? She always makes us breakfast when she comes over early." "That's a good idea. Think we can manage pancakes without burning them?" "Probably not. But we can try." They worked together in the kitchen, trying to be quiet but failing spectacularly as pans clattered and Mason kept up a running commentary. Eventually Emma stirred on the couch, sitting up with confused, sleepy eyes. "Morning," Ryan called over. "We're making breakfast. Emphasis on attempting." Emma padded into the kitchen, her hair a mess, wearing the same dress from last night, but somehow still beautiful. "You let me sleep here all night." "You looked comfortable. Seemed rude to move you." "Is that weird?" Mason asked, whisking eggs with intense concentration. "That Emma slept here?" "Not weird," Emma assured him, ruffling his hair. "But I should have probably gone home and changed. I'm wearing yesterday's clothes." "We don't judge," Mason said seriously. "Right, Dad?" "Right. We're a judgment-free zone." Ryan flipped a pancake that was only slightly burnt. "See? We're accepting of all flaws." Emma laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen with warmth. She moved to help, and together the three of them finished making breakfast. Pancakes that were mostly edible, eggs that were scrambled if slightly rubbery, and toast that Ryan managed not to burn. They ate together at the small table, Mason chattering about his plans for the day, Emma and Ryan exchanging looks that said everything words couldn't. This felt like family, like home, like the future they'd been talking about was already starting to take shape in the present. After breakfast, Emma went to change, and Ryan got Mason started on his morning routine. When she came back, dressed in fresh clothes with her hair brushed, Ryan walked her to the door. "Thank you for staying," he said quietly. "Thank you for letting me." Emma went up on her toes to kiss him. "Same time tonight. You're going to spoil me, being around this much. That's the plan," she grinned. "Get used to it, Ryan Cole. I'm not going anywhere." And watching her walk to her door, turning to wave before disappearing inside, Ryan believed her. For the first time in 3 years, he truly believed that someone was choosing to stay, choosing him, choosing Mason, choosing the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of their lives. The fear was still there, probably would be for a while. But it was quieter now, overshadowed by something bigger and brighter and infinitely more powerful. Hope, trust, love. And that, Ryan thought, was more than enough to build a future on. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt less like a routine and more like a life being built brick by brick. Emma became a constant presence, woven so naturally into their days that Ryan sometimes forgot there had been a time before her. She was there for Tuesday night dinners and Thursday movie marathons. She helped Mason with his multiplication homework, her patience endless even when he got frustrated. She brought coffee on Saturday mornings and stayed for pancakes that Ryan was slowly, incrementally getting better at making. "Only slightly burnt this time," Emma observed one Saturday, examining her pancake with mock seriousness. "That's progress." "I'm a work in progress," Ryan said, sliding into the chair beside her. "Aren't we all?" She kissed his cheek, and Mason made a gagging sound from across the table. "You guys are so gross." "You said we could be gross as long as it wasn't excessive," Ryan reminded him. "A kiss on the cheek is acceptable gross. Anything more is excessive." Mason took a massive bite of pancake, syrup dripping down his chin. "These are actually pretty good, Dad." High praise from my toughest critic. 2 months into their relationship, Ryan brought Emma to dinner at Claire's house. His sister had been asking weekly, and finally, Ryan felt ready. Emma was nervous during the drive, her knee bouncing in that way it did when she was anxious. They're going to love you, Ryan assured her, reaching over to still her knee with his hand. You don't know that. What if Claire thinks I'm not good enough for you? What if she thinks I'm going to hurt you or Mason? Then I'll tell her she's wrong. Ryan squeezed her knee. But she won't think that. She's been waiting for me to find someone like you for years. She's going to be thrilled, Mason piped up from the back seat. Aunt Claire's really nice. She makes the best desserts, and she doesn't ask weird questions like some grown-ups do. What kind of weird questions? Emma asked. Like Mrs. Patterson at school always asks if I have a girlfriend. I'm 7. That's weird. Emma laughed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. That is pretty weird. Claire's house was warm and chaotic, filled with the sounds of her 2 kids running around and music playing from the kitchen. She answered the door with a dish towel over her shoulder and a smile that widened when she saw Emma. You must be Emma. I'm so glad you're here. Claire pulled her into a hug before Emma could respond. Come in, come in. Mike's trying to grill and the kids are being feral, so it's a typical Sunday. Ryan watched Emma relax further as Claire ushered them inside, chattering about dinner and asking Mason about school. His sister had a gift for putting people at ease, and within minutes, Emma was laughing at one of Claire's stories, helping set the table while the kids showed her their latest Lego creation. Over dinner, Claire grilled Ryan with the subtlety of a bulldozer. So how long have you 2 been together officially? About 2 months, Ryan said. And it's going well? Really well, Emma answered, reaching under the table to find Ryan's hand. Good, because this one, Claire pointed her fork at Ryan, has been alone too long. It's about time someone made him happy. Claire, Ryan warned. What? I'm just saying, you smile more now. Mason's noticed too, haven't you, buddy? Mason looked up from his chicken nuggets. Dad smiles a lot more, and he doesn't forget stuff as much. I still forget things, Ryan protested. Not the important stuff, Mason clarified. You haven't missed anything at school since the science fair. Ryan felt his throat tighten. He'd been hypervigilant since that day, triple-checking his calendar, setting multiple reminders. The fear of letting Mason down again had been powerful motivation. That's because your dad loves you very much, Emma said gently. And he's working hard to show up for you. I know, Mason grinned. He's pretty good at it, most of the time. The evening was easy after that. Claire and Emma bonded over their shared love of terrible reality TV shows. Mike and Ryan talked work while the kids played. At one point, Ryan looked across the living room to find Emma sitting on the floor with Mason and Claire's youngest, helping them build something elaborate with blocks, and his heart did something complicated in his chest. This was what he'd been afraid of. Not the relationship itself, but this. The integration of lives, the blending of families, the vulnerability of letting someone become so essential that losing them would shatter everything. But watching Emma laugh at something Mason said, seeing the way she fit so naturally into this piece of his life, Ryan realized the fear was worth it. On the drive home, Mason fell asleep in the back seat almost immediately, worn out from playing. Your sister is wonderful, Emma said, her hand finding Ryan's on the center console. I can see where you get your stubbornness from, though. She cornered you in the kitchen, didn't she? She wanted to make sure my intentions were pure. Emma smiled. I told her I was madly in love with her brother and planning to stick around for the long haul. She seemed satisfied. Ryan's breath caught. They'd said I love you before, but something about the casual way Emma said it now, the certainty in her voice, made it feel more real. The long haul? He repeated. The very long haul, like annoying you when we're old and gray long. Emma's thumb traced patterns on his palm. Is that okay? More than okay. Ryan lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. It's everything. Spring turned to summer, and with it came new rhythms. Mason's school let out, which meant different scheduling challenges. Emma adjusted her work hours to help out, watching Mason in the mornings while Ryan went to the office early, letting Ryan come home earlier in the afternoons for father-son time. You don't have to do this, Ryan told her one morning when she showed up at 7 a.m. with coffee and a smile. I can figure out summer care. I know you can. but I want to. Emma settled onto the couch with her laptop while Mason finished his cereal. Besides, this way, I get to have breakfast with my two favorite people and work in my pajamas. It's a win-win. Mason started calling her Emma without the careful distance he'd maintained at first. Just Emma, said with the easy affection of someone who'd always been there. He asked her to come to his swimming lessons and his summer camp performances. He saved his best drawings for her refrigerator. He started saying we when he talked about family things, and the we always included Emma. Ryan watched it happen with a mixture of joy and terror. Mason was attaching, fully and completely. If this didn't work out, but he couldn't let himself finish that thought. It was working out. It was working beautifully. One evening in late July, Ryan and Emma were cleaning up after dinner while Mason was in the bath. The apartment was humid from the summer heat, the windows open to catch any breeze. I've been thinking, Emma said, drying dishes while Ryan washed. About us. About the future. Ryan's hand stilled in the soapy water. Okay. My lease is up in 2 months, September 1st. She set down the dish towel, turning to face him. And I need to decide if I'm renewing or not. The implication hung heavy in the air between them. Ryan dried his hands slowly, his mind racing. What do you want to do? He asked carefully. I want to talk about the possibility of not renewing, of maybe finding a different living arrangement. Emma's hands twisted together. I'm not trying to pressure you. I know we said we'd take things slow, but we've been together almost 5 months now, and I spend most of my time here anyway, and it feels silly to keep paying rent on an apartment I barely sleep in. You want to move in? Ryan's heart was hammering. I want to talk about it. As a possibility. If you're ready. If Mason's ready. Emma moved closer. But if it's too soon, I understand. I can renew the lease. We can keep things as they are. Ryan thought about Mason's question months ago. Are you going to ask her to move in? He thought about Emma's toothbrush that had appeared in his bathroom, her coffee mug that lived in his cabinet, her laptop that spent more time on his couch than her own. He thought about waking up with her in his arms and how right that felt. How complete. I need to talk to Mason, he said finally. This affects him too. But Emma? I'm not saying no. I'm saying let me talk to my kid first. Emma's smile was tremulous with hope. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That night, after Mason was in his pajamas and climbing into bed, Ryan sat on the edge of the mattress, trying to figure out how to start this conversation. You've got your serious face on, Mason observed. Are we having a big talk? Kind of. I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be really honest with me. Ryan took a breath. How would you feel if Emma moved in with us? Like, lived here all the time? Mason's eyes went wide. Really? She wants to do that? She's thinking about it. Her lease is up soon, and she needs to decide if she wants to stay in her apartment or not. But this is your home too, buddy. Your opinion matters. Mason sat up, hugging his knees to his chest, his face scrunched in concentration. Would she have her own room? Probably not. The apartment's not big enough. She'd share my room. So, like how married people live. Sort of. Except we're not married. But you might get married someday. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe. That's a different conversation for a different time. Right now, we're just talking about living together. Mason was quiet for a long moment, and Ryan waited, his heart in his throat. Finally, his son looked up. I think it would be good, Mason said carefully. I like having Emma around. She makes everything better. She helps with homework and she makes you laugh, and she doesn't get mad when I'm grumpy in the mornings like some people do. Some people being me? You get grumpy too sometimes, Dad. It's okay. We all have feelings. Mason's expression turned serious. But if she lives here, does that mean she's not going to leave? Like, she can't just move away if she gets tired of us? There it was. The fear underneath everything. Ryan pulled Mason into his arms. Buddy, Emma's not going to get tired of us. She loves us. Both of us. And yes, living together is a bigger commitment. It means we're building a life together, the three of us. But I need you to understand something. Even if Emma lived next door forever, she still wouldn't leave. She's chosen to be part of our family. That doesn't change based on where she sleeps. But it would be nice if she slept here, Mason said against Ryan's shoulder. Then she could make breakfast more and help me feed my fish and watch TV with us every night instead of just sometimes. Ryan's eyes stung. So you're saying yes? I'm saying yes. Emma should move in. Mason pulled back. Can we tell her now? It's past your bedtime. This is important. More important than sleep. Ryan laughed, his chest feeling too full. Okay, we can tell her now, but then straight to bed, deal? Deal! They walked to Emma's apartment together, Mason practically vibrating with excitement. Emma answered the door in her pajamas, her hair wet from a shower, surprise crossing her face when she saw them. Is everything okay? We had a family meeting, Mason announced, and we voted. You should move in with us. Emma's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes going bright. Yeah? Yeah, Ryan confirmed, his voice rough. If the offer still stands, we want you here, all the time, not just visits, home. Emma made a sound between a laugh and a sob. And then she was hugging Mason, who hugged her back fiercely. Over his head, her eyes met Ryan's, shining with tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, the offer still stands. I would love to move in with you guys. Can you move in tomorrow? Mason asked, practical as ever. It might take a little longer than that, Emma said, laughing. I have to pack and give notice and figure out what furniture to bring. You can bring your plants, Mason said generously. Even the ones you keep killing. We'll help you keep them alive. That's very kind of you. They stood in Emma's doorway for a few more minutes, making tentative plans, before Ryan reminded Mason about the bedtime deal. Walking back to their apartment, Mason's hand in his, Ryan felt something settle in his chest that had been restless for years. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of planning and packing. Emma gave notice on her apartment, and they spent weekends sorting through her belongings, deciding what would come with her and what would go to storage or donation. Mason helped by trying on all of Emma's hats and giving serious opinions about which books she should keep. This one has a dragon on it, so obviously you need it, he explained, holding up a fantasy novel Emma had read in college. Obviously, Emma agreed solemnly. They rearranged Ryan's bedroom to make space for Emma's things, cleaned out half the closet, cleared 3 drawers in the dresser. Mason insisted on helping, treating it like the most important project of his life. Claire came over one weekend to help, and found Ryan standing in the middle of his bedroom looking overwhelmed. Second thoughts? She asked gently.